stop fighting me and stay down on the ground.
Okay. Just let me go.
There is a specific kind of silence that only lives inside people who have seen the world at its absolute worst. It isn't the awkward quiet of someone who is shy, nor is it the nervous stillness of a person trying to blend into the background. It is an intentional, disciplined quiet. It is the silence of a calm ocean right before a hurricane strikes. On a cold, rain-slicked Tuesday evening, as the city bus rattled down Route 9 toward the edge of town, that exact silence sat in the very last row, wrapped in an oversized denim jacket and clutching a beat-up canvas backpack. Her name was Maya. To anyone looking at her, she seemed completely invisible, just another tired commuter with messy dark hair, slouching against the smudged window, staring out at the blurred streetlights. She looked small, fragile, and utterly harmless. When three young men boarded the bus at the Midtown terminal, loudly laughing and smelling heavily of cheap liquor and arrogance, nobody in the front rows dared to meet their eyes. They were the kind of men who fed on fear, walking down the central aisle like they owned the vehicle, knocking into knees and making crude remarks to an elderly woman who quickly looked down at her hands. Most people in this world learn to avoid conflict by looking away, hoping the storm passes over them. But Maya didn't look away out of fear. She observed them through the reflection in the glass, measuring their strides, counting their numbers, assessing their movement, and identifying their weak points in less than 3 seconds. It was a muscle memory buried so deep within her soul that she couldn't turn it off, even if she wanted to. The leader of the group, a hulking man named Marcus with a jagged scar across his chin and a heavy leather jacket, slammed his hand against the overhead handrail, causing the entire bus to jump. His two companions, Trent and Leo, snickered behind him, looking for an easy target to entertain their cruel mood. The rain hit the windows harder, locking everyone inside a speeding metal box with unpredictable danger. The bus driver, an older man with graying hair and tired eyes, glanced into his rearview mirror, his knuckles turning white on the steering wheel, but he said nothing. He had a family to feed, and in this city, heroics often ended in emergency rooms. Marcus paced down the aisle, his heavy boots thumping against the wet floorboards, until his eyes landed on the back row. There sat Maya, pulling the collar of her worn sweater a little higher around her throat. To Marcus, she looked like the ultimate prize for a bully, isolated, quiet, defenseless, and completely alone. He walked up to her seat, leaning over her until his shadow blocked out the low yellow light of the bus interior. He flashed a predatory grin, placing one dirty boot right onto the empty seat beside. "Hey sweetheart," Marcus sneered, his voice loud enough to echo above the hum of the engine. "You look lonely back here. Why don't you make some room for real men?" Maya didn't flinch. She didn't drop her gaze or tremble as Marcus expected. Instead, she slowly turned her head, her soft hazel eyes locking onto his with a calmness that felt almost unnatural. Underneath her loose clothes, hidden beneath layers of fabric meant to conceal her frame, lay a body forged in the hardest military training facility on Earth. Years before sitting on this bus, Maya had been known by a very different name in elite special operations circles. She was one of the extremely rare women to ever complete the brutal, soul-crushing pipeline of naval. "Please move your foot," Maya said softly, her voice barely louder than a whisper, yet carrying a strange, immovable weight. Marcus blinked, surprised by the lack of panic in her tone, before letting out a loud, mocking laugh that made his friends join in. "Did you hear that, boys? Little girl is giving orders. What if I don't move my foot? What are you gonna do?" Trent shoved his way closer, leaning over the back of the seat in front of her. "Look at her jacket, man. It's practically falling apart. She probably doesn't even have enough money for the fare." He reached out, his hand darting toward Maya's canvas bag. "Let's see what she's hiding in here." Instantly, Maya's hand moved. It wasn't a violent strike, but a lightning-fast block, grabbing Trent's wrist with a grip like a steel vise. She didn't press hard enough to break the bone, but she compressed the radial nerve just enough to send a surge of intense, paralyzing pain shooting up his arm. Trent gasped, his face turning pale as his knees buckled slightly. "Don't touch my bag," Maya repeated, her voice still completely level, her breath steady and measured. Marcus's eyes widened in sudden anger. He grabbed Trent by the jacket and pulled him back, staring down at Maya with a mixture of shock and violent outrage. "You touched my friend, you little bitch," he growled, stepping into the narrow aisle, clenching his fists until his knuckles popped. The rest of the passengers gasped, shrinking deeper into their seats. A young mother near the front pulled her child close, whispering a prayer. Nobody moved to help her. In the minds of everyone on that bus, a terrible tragedy was about to unfold. An innocent, shy girl was about to be brutalized by 3 ruthless men. But what none of them understood was that Maya wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid of what she might do to them if she let go of her restraint. Maya had spent the last 2 years living in deliberate isolation, hiding away in a small, quiet apartment, taking an entry-level job at a local library, and trying to forget the violence that had defined her former life. She had survived hellish missions, lost brothers in arms, and carried scars that ran far deeper than the physical ones etched into her skin. She had sworn an oath to herself when she hung up her uniform: she would never use her training for destruction again unless there was absolutely no other choice. "I don't want any trouble," Maya said quietly, releasing Trent's wrist and sitting back, her hands flat on her lap. Her posture looked passive, almost submissive to an untrained eye, but every muscle in her core was coiled like a steel spring. "Just take your seats and Marcus mistook her restraint for weakness. He smirked, believing her initial move had just been a lucky reflex. "You don't get to tell us what to do," he spat, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a heavy, flick blade knife. The metallic click of the blade opening resonated through the quiet bus like a thunderclap. The passengers screamed. The bus driver slammed his foot on the brakes slightly, causing the vehicle to jerk, but Marcus maintained his footing, his eyes fixed on Maya with sadistic pleasure. "Now," Marcus hissed, waving the blade inches from her face, "you're going to get down on your knees and apologize to my buddy, or I'm going to carve that pretty little face of yours." The sight of the weapon changed everything inside Maya's mind. The quiet civilian faded away, and the operator took over. The atmosphere around her dropped into absolute zero. Her breathing slowed down to 4 beats per minute, her peripheral vision expanded, and time seemed to decelerate into a crawl. She noticed the angle of the blade, the off-balance weight distribution of Marcus's stance, the wet floor underneath his left boot, and the position of Trent and Leo behind him. She knew 7 different ways to end Marcus's life before he could even blink. But she didn't want to kill him. She had seen enough death to last 10 lifetimes. Instead of shrinking back from the knife, Maya stood up slowly. As she rose to her full height, something in her posture shifted dramatically. The slouch was gone. Her shoulders squared, her back turned rigid as iron, and her eyes, which had looked soft moments ago, locked onto Marcus with an intensity so fierce, so terrifyingly cold, that the man involuntarily took a half step back. "Put the knife away," Maya said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the hum of the engine with the cold clarity of a sniper's rifle. "This is your only warning." Leo, the third bully, laughed nervously, trying to shake off the sudden wave of dread filling the air. "Shoot, Marcus, she's bluffing." Marcus lunged forward, thrusting the blade directly toward Maya's stomach with violent intent. What happened next lasted less than 2 seconds, but to everyone watching, it looked like a scene straight out of an action movie slowed down to hyper-reality. Maya didn't step back. She stepped in, closing the distance to strip away the weapon's range. Her left hand shot out like a striking cobra, catching Marcus's knife wrist mid-air and redirecting the blade away from her body. Simultaneously, her right palm delivered a sharp, devastating upward strike to Marcus's sternum, driving the air completely out of his lungs. Before he could gasp for breath, Maya twisted his wrist with precise leverage, forcing his hand to open. The knife dropped harmlessly toward the floor, but before it could hit the ground, in the same fluid motion, she leveraged Marcus's weight against his poor footing, driving her knee into his thigh nerve and slamming his face directly into the padded leather backrest of the seat. Trent and Leo stood frozen in sheer disbelief, their mouths agape. The shy, quiet girl in the faded denim jacket was standing over their leader, her stance perfect, her hands raised in an effortless defense guard, her eyes burning with an unshakable, lethal authority. Who the hell are you? Trent stammered, backing away until his spine hit the exit door of the bus. What are you? Maya didn't answer right away. She smoothed down her jacket, her heart rate remaining perfectly steady. From inside her inner pocket, as she adjusted her sweater, a glint of silver caught the dim overhead light. Hanging around her neck was a set of custom military dog tags, engraved with Special Forces credentials and the unmistakable emblem of the Navy SEALs. The bus driver, who had pulled the bus over to the side of the highway during the altercation, stared into the rearview mirror with wide, tear-filled eyes. He recognized that emblem instantly. His own son had served in the Navy years ago. She's an operator, the driver whispered under his breath. Leo, panicked and desperate, tried to rush Maya from behind, swinging a heavy brass knuckle fist toward her head. But Maya didn't even turn her entire body. She simply ducked beneath the wild swing, wrapped her arm around Leo's overextended elbow, and applied a joint lock that brought him instantly to his knees, crying out in pain. I spent 8 years fighting people who were trained to kill, Maya whispered into Leo's ear, her voice dripping with a quiet, terrifying authority. You are 3 cowards picking on defenseless people because you are weak inside. You think power comes from fear. Real power comes from discipline and protection. She released Leo, who collapsed onto the floor beside Marcus, clutching his arm and shivering in complete terror. Trent dropped to his knees voluntarily, throwing his hands in the air, surrendering completely before she could even look at him. The bus fell into a profound, breathtaking silence. The rain continued to beat against the windows, but inside the vehicle, the air felt completely different. The terror that had choked the passengers moments ago had vanished, replaced by an overwhelming sense of safety and awe. An elderly gentleman sitting near the front began to clap slowly, his weathered hands creating a rhythm that was soon joined by the young mother, the teenagers, and finally the bus driver himself. The entire bus burst into applause for the quiet girl in the back row. Maya felt a sudden blush warm her cheeks. The intense, deadly focus of the operative dissolved, and the shy, modest woman returned. She quickly tucked her dog tags back under her shirt, ducking her head slightly, embarrassed by the sudden attention. She picked up her canvas backpack from the floor and placed it over her shoulder. Police are 2 minutes away, the bus driver announced, looking back at Maya with a proud, grateful smile. Thank you, young lady. You saved us tonight. Maya offered a small, gentle smile. Just making sure everyone gets home, she said quietly. When the bus doors hissed open at the next stop, Maya stepped out into the cool, rain-washed air. The storm was finally beginning to clear, letting a sliver of moonlight pierce through the dark clouds above. As she walked down the quiet sidewalk, her hands pushed deep into her jacket pockets, she realized something powerful. For 2 years, she had been hiding her past, believing her training was a curse that only brought violence and pain. But tonight, in the quiet dark of a city bus, she remembered that the purpose of strength isn't to control others, it is to stand as a shield for those who cannot stand for themselves. True strength never needs to shout, brag, or intimidate. It sits quietly in the dark, watching over the world, ready to protect the innocent the moment the light begins to fade.